All right. Check, 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 check. You know I'm saying that, but like I actually can't hear anything. All right, MMA lovers, we have a huge fight coming up this Saturday between Jon Jones and Ciryl Gane. I've already given my predictions on who I think is going to win, so there may be some bias here, but a big question that's coming up is who has more to gain from this fight, whether it's Jon Jones or Ciryl Gane. So if Jon was to win or if he were to lose, what does he have at stake compared to Ciryl Gane? If he were to win or lose, what's at stake for him? So I think we can think about this a few different ways. In the case of you losing, a lot of times in the UFC, we weight losses so much because we hold, at least it seems like we in the UFC hold this win streak or as many defenses as possible to a very, very high standard. So if you lose, your street cred definitely goes down. You appear more human like the rest of us. And then there's blood in the water and the sharks start to circle. So of course in the UFC, it makes sense to try to win as much as possible, to be so treacherous that people don't want to go against you. So in terms of legacy, I think that Jon Jones's legacy is cemented because of his time in the UFC in the light heavyweight division. I think that everyone, no matter who you ask, even if they don't put him as number one, they're probably going to put him in at least the top 5 of UFC fighters ever. And I don't think that a loss with the heavyweight division would change that, because then you're going to say, well, he was likely better suited for the frame of a light heavyweight division. He is older now, even though he's still a young man, and he's just past his prime. That doesn't take away from the amazing things that he's been able to do already. If he were to win, I think what it does is it silences some of the questions that still hover around his legacy. I think it silences some of the questions of not only is he likely the best right now, but you could easily make an argument for the best of all time. And Jon has even indicated that that's really what he's chasing. He wants to be known as the best to ever do it, not necessarily the best in that division or the best during that time period. And so I think he has a really strong case for that. But I think he can continue building that case even in the heavyweight division. So even if he loses against Ciryl Gane, which I'll be clear I don't think is going to happen, but even if he were to lose against Ciryl Gane, there are still so many of us that are going to sign up to want to see another fight, to see that fight again, to see him fight someone else because of how great he's been in previous times in the UFC. Ciryl Gane, to me, has the most to gain really from this fight, because no one was discussing Ciryl Gane in any popular fashion as someone who would go against Jon, mostly because we haven't seen as many fights from him. He's lost several fights recently. The fight against Francis, he lost. And, he did some really great things in that fight. So there's definitely some sparks of, amazingness and, definitely some show of how great of a fighter he is. And to be clear, Ciryl Gane is a great fighter. I think he has great technical ability. I think his footwork is really nice and pristine. And I think he's also very unique in the way he can approach a fight and the way he can stand and things like that. So it's not to say that Ciryl Gane is some, has been or, subpar fighter. He's not. He's a great fighter. But in the conversations of who many would consider the GOAT of UFC would fight, he was never in that conversation in any broad form. Instead, it was he should fight Francis, of course, for the belt, Is he going to be able to stand up against that striking power that Francis has, that knockout power? Or there are conversations around Stipe and others, many of whom would say Stipe is probably the GOAT of the heavyweight division. And so for Ciryl Gane, he has an opportunity to be catapulted to the Mount Rushmores, potentially, of heavyweight greats if he's able to take down Jon Jones. And that's not an opportunity that most people would get. A lot of things had to fall in the right way. Stipe presumably not wanting to take the fight or not being prepared. Francis deciding to leave the UFC and pursue other pastures. So a lot of things had to fall properly for Ciryl Gane to get to this position. And I think if he loses, I'm not sure that he would get this sort of catapult again to the top in order to fight and to compete. And so I think he has the most to gain. Now, if he loses, I think it's relatively a small loss. I think a lot of people would say, he's fighting Jon Jones. So of course, we already expecting Jon to win anyway. So we want to see him come out. We want to see him go down swinging. We want to see, it really be a brutal match. And we want to see him take the fight to Jon, of course. But I don't think most people would knock him if he didn't come out on top. But if he comes out on top, he's now in this upper echelon of very few UFC fighters. Whereas Jon, even if he wins the fight, you're talking about small or incremental, maybe not small, but definitely incremental additions to what we already perceive as greatness. Versus Ciryl Gane, he's now catapulted into greatness in a way that I believe most people don't necessarily view him right now. So again, I'm super excited for this fight. We'll see who has more to lose when it all comes down in the octagon. And Saturday, where I'll be.